Hey, everybody, welcome back. I'm excited for today's episode with my friend Sian Hill. I've been getting to know Sian the last, month or two now is what it's been. And her and I are so aligned. It's incredible. You are going to love today's episode and today's content. Sian is a master coach. She's got a podcast of her own. She's an internationally certified NLP trainer and timeline therapy and hypnotherapy. I mean, this is someone that knows what they're talking about when it comes to the mind. And, which I've been loving this book, by the way, but she's got her brand new book, Activate Your RAS, The Art and Science of Creating Your Reality from the Inside Out. So as you can guess, I am super excited about today's episode. Thanks for your time today, Sian.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for such a wonderful intro. I'm going to come here again.
Yeah, you got it. We'd love to have you for sure. Hey, let's give everybody a bit of background on you. So I just kind of told them a bit of your professional background, but let's hear a bit about your story and how did you end up in the science of mind, if you will.
Yeah, so I had no intention of learning anything about coaching or the mind or anything. It came to me. So roll back the clock to about 2010, and my life was a bit rubbish. So I had gotten myself in the position where I had a lot of debt. I was in a toxic relationship. I had no career prospects, and I was very quickly heading towards 30, which is the age where I thought I would have had it all figured out, right? By the time I hit 30, that's it. I'll be house, kids, career, the lot. And
Right.
I was nowhere near that. And I remember asking myself all the time, or thinking to myself, there has to be more to life than this. Every day I would go into a job that I didn't enjoy. I think this cannot be it. This isn't what I signed up for. And then it was around that time that I started hearing this idea that thoughts become things and you create your own reality. My mum bought me this book that said, you create your own reality. In fact, it was The Secret, which I'm sure a lot of people are aware of.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I heard it, I thought, yes, something resonates. And I thought, this feels like I've come home. This feels like the truth.
Yeah.
And I looked at all of the experiences that I'd had to date, the situation I was in, and could quite easily pinpoint that, yes, my thoughts have definitely created this, because I had no self-worth. I had no confidence, and my outer reality just reflected that. So I thought, right, I get it. I've done a great job so far of creating what I don't want. So let's flip the script, turn it around, and start creating what I do want. Roll forward about 6 months, and I had been meditating, journaling, visualizing, doing all of the things, and waiting for checks to arrive in the mail and cars to land on the drive and all of that stuff, and none of it happened. So I felt like an even bigger failure. It's like, right, I can't even create my own reality. What is going on? So it led me down a rabbit hole, because I knew that it was true. I just kept coming up against the how. So I believe it, I know it's possible, but if your thoughts create your reality, how do you change your thoughts? Because mine were they felt like they were thinking me. During that process, I stumbled across this thing called NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming, which said it was a bit like the user manual for your mind. I thought, yep, I could absolutely do with one of them. So I ended up taking the course to learn how to do it. I thought, oh, rather than having a coach work with me, let's just learn it for myself. So I did my training in NLP, timeline therapy, and hypnotherapy. So all different modalities that are about changing your thoughts, your emotions, and beginning to take control of your life. And I came at that training, and so much had changed. My whole perception of the world, the way that I felt, I started to feel like I was in control bit by bit, and stuff started to change gradually. It wasn't like this overnight magic pill where I woke up and suddenly everything I ever wanted had appeared, but I felt different, and the world looked different, and opportunities that I'd wanted for my whole life started just kind of rolling in. So I continued down this NLP road and did my master practitioner training, which is like the level 2. And after that, everything transformed. And in such a short space of time, I left the toxic relationship that had gone on almost 10 years. I started getting work that I'd always wanted and paying off my debts. My health had started improving. Just this kind of snowball effect of goodness and positivity in my life.
Hmm.
And then after a while, I realized, you know what, this is the stuff that I love. It's the stuff that I talk about all day long. Even when I'm doing the work that I thought I wanted to do, I was telling everybody about mindset and, oh, look, what about if you do this thing? You can improve your thoughts and quiet your mind. And I realized, you know what, this is what I actually want to do. So I went on to become a trainer and then started training people to become coaches.
Okay.
And that's essentially what I do now. So roll forward to kind of, what are we now, 2023, and I coach one-to-one with people. I also train people to become coaches and all things mindset. So it's something I'm so passionate about because it's something that I've experienced and lived firsthand that has changed my whole life. And life these days is good. I've got a great relationship. We've been together 9 years and it's just lovely. I'm doing work that I enjoy. My health is good. And I want to share with people how they can do that too, that it is possible. If there's something that you desire, if you can think it, if you want it, then you can achieve it. And usually the thing that's getting in the way is ourselves. So I'm all about how do we overcome that and get into alignment with what we want to create.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think that your story is so powerful because I believe that millions of people on the planet that have been exposed to the idea, and The Secret was probably the most influential for at least opening the door to this, that thoughts become things and we do create a reality. And I feel like millions, and I was one of them for a while too, is that intuitively I had a sense that this was, just like you said, this was correct. There was something about it that felt right. And yet, although, and I was in the same position for a long period of time too, I was reading, studying, I'm scripting, I'm visualizing, I'm meditating, my life wasn't changing. And so I'm curious from your perspective, for someone that's listening and saying, yeah, I do believe this and I've got affirmations, I'm doing this, but it's not changing for me. Then from A, your own life experience, and then B, as you've coached others, I know we can't do an entire coaching session, but what would you recommend to them from, okay, hey, you're here, you're doing some of these things, but the outer results aren't changing?
Yeah. So I think the starting point for me in all of this is awareness. So becoming aware of your thoughts, of the kind of the patterns of behavior that you're carrying out, because most of what we do falls unconscious.
For sure
we do it on autopilot, and there can almost be well, certainly in my experience, I used to almost brush under the carpet where I was, pretend it wasn't there, and then put like a happy positivity sticker on stuff, thinking if I just put this plaster on, then stuff will start to change. It's like pretending that you're feeling something you're not. It doesn't necessarily work. So take a minute first to acknowledge, where am I starting from? Because when you know where you are, you can then start to make changes and address what's keeping you there. Then obviously, there are many, many powerful tools that can change your thinking very quickly. It's what we do as coaches. Yet a great starting point is to get very clear on what is it that I want, because often we think we're clear and yet the lines can be quite blurry. It's like, oh, I want this, but then I kind of want that as well. It's like, just decide on something that you know that you want, so you have clarity in your mind. Here's my starting point, here's what I want to get to, and then treat it like you would many things in life. We have this tendency when it comes to creating our reality, like, I'm starting here today, and by the end of the week, I want to have gone from 20 grand in debt to £1 million in the bank. And it's like, in life, if we were, I don't know, building a house, having a baby, changing body shape, we accept that there's a process in place and there's been a lot that has led up to that point. And it's going to take a bit of change and rewiring and thinking differently to get from A to B. So get on board with being in it for the long term. Because I think that there's a tendency to think if it doesn't happen by next week, then, well, it doesn't work. And then you almost start again and start from scratch. You put the tools down, forget them, they're a load of rubbish, and then you have to pick them back up. But if you can create that momentum, you've got movement already. So just picking up the tools and being, right, I'm going to take this one step at a time. I'm going to look at, where am I starting from? What's the next logical step that I can get on board with? And just focus on that with the end goal in mind. So you've always got, where am I heading? And is this next logical step taking me there? Rather than trying to fix everything all at once.
That's so good. I'm glad you shared that idea of, continuing the process and keep moving forward, because like you said, I mean, we understand it's about 9 months for a baby, right? You want to change your body. There's a length of time for that too. But this idea of our thoughts creating our reality, and then we're coming up as you know very well, I mean, against the unconscious part of us that has been so deeply programmed in a lot of ways. And if we don't see change in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or a month, or even 2 months or 3 months, then we begin at times, oh, this doesn't work. It's not even worth it. And then the problem is that now you're stuck on these new thoughts and feelings that are, they're doing the opposite work of what you want. Right. And
and then you find all the ways that they don't work, because that's where your focus is. So
you can create that. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Even just treating it one day at a time. Because in the book, one of the things that I talk about is, because it's something I was guilty of, is meditating for 10, 20, 30 minutes a day, feeling really good, and then going about the rest of the day feeling just the usual crappy way. And I thought, there's like 24 hours in a day, so 30 minutes versus the other 23.5 hours. Yeah. That's not really changing things. That's just having a little time out. So it's like, how can I actually start to make small incremental changes in the day so that I tip the scales, so that the majority of the day I'm starting to feel differently, even if it's just 51% that is in your favor, and you're spending 51% of the time focus on what you want. And bear in mind, we like to sleep for, I don't know, 6 to 10 hours, depending on how much you like to sleep. So there's not even that many hours. So that, see it as a day-by-day process of just a little thought at a time. That's all I've got to do. And if I keep doing that, a bit like if you keep doing your reps at the gym, eventually it adds up. It's not about going right in there and picking up the heavy weight and then going, oh, this doesn't work. I haven't changed my body. I couldn't squat 200 pounds.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think too, I'd love to hear your comments on this, of how when we start on this process, or maybe we've been doing it for a while, studying it for a while, applying it, what I've noticed in myself at times in the past, and then often in coaching others too, is that sometimes we get a bit too serious about this idea. And so when negative thoughts come up, it's like, oh shit, I can't be thinking that. Right. So I know NLP, I know a little bit about it, not a lot, but one of the things I did take out of it was this idea of pattern interrupts. And can you talk a bit about that in terms of how we might be able to apply that when we're getting in a negative cycle?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So when you find yourself going down the negative spiral, going down the rabbit hole of, thinking negative thoughts, feeling bad, whatever the way that you do it is, it goes back to the first step, which is awareness. So you've also almost got to catch yourself in the moment as you're doing it. And at that point, where you would usually carry on and let yourself take a deep dive, do anything that's different, and you can really have some fun with this, so it takes the seriousness out of it. I'm talking like, there's the obvious stuff where you say, okay, count to 10, breathe, move your body. I like to do silly things like suddenly burst into song, or twirl around 10 times, touch the floor, and do some hopscotch, whatever, something that's really random. But even just doing that, you break the pattern in such a stupid way that you can't help but laugh. And in doing that, it's like, how do I go back to that old thought when I have just literally like dance like a clown or whatever. So do anything that you can to interrupt that pattern in the moment. It's a bit like, if you think of it like you're going down the motorway, and you're well on track to go from wherever it is that you want to be. So the momentum's going, and then you have this negative thought, which is almost like the junction point that's coming up, and you can either keep on going down this negative spiral, or you can come off and just take a little diversion that's going to kind of take you in a whole new trajectory. I can never say that word. So as you get to that point of choice, do I come off at the junction, or do I keep going down this kind of negative thought pattern? do anything to get on that junction. And you can almost play that scenario in your head. Right, I'm going to turn direction. So I'm going to literally adopt my physiology in a new shape. I'm going to change my voice tone, or whatever. Just something that is different to what you were doing, that's enough to interrupt the thoughts that you've got in your head, change your physiology, change the way that you feel. And then before you know it, after a few seconds of doing that, you've gone off the motorway and you're down a whole new country road with nice pictures and scenery.
I like that a lot. I'm glad you shared that, because what I've been trying to do for myself often is, and I know that I catch myself in battles with it, is I'm attempting to interrupt it, but not by changing my physiology or doing something external like that, but I'm, trying to change the thought pattern. And sometimes that works and lots of times it doesn't. Right. So I'm really glad you shared that. I'm going to try that myself the next time I get caught up in my thinking, is just even to do something in the physical and the external that completely changes that thought pattern.
Yeah. Our thoughts. So the pictures that we have in our head, the self-talk that we have, the way that we feel, and our physiology are all linked. So when one changes, the other one has to change. And you only have to think about this in the most simple terms of, if you're feeling a bit sad or down, you tend to slump your shoulders, you put your head down, you breathe shallow, and the pictures in your head and the internal chatter is not good.
Yeah.
Whereas in that moment, if you can just throw your shoulders back, take a deep breath, put your head up, walk around, it's that your physiology has changed. So the way that you feel has changed, and the pictures and the self-talk will change as a result. So it's kind of, it's looking at, what have I got on me physically, like within me, that I can utilize in the moment to just shift it. It's not necessarily doing the deeper work. Yet if you can interrupt that pattern enough times over a long enough period of time, it will start to create new ways of thinking. Before you know it, that is the way that you do things. That's the new pattern of behavior rather than that old one. So yeah, use what's at your disposal rather than always looking for the answers outside of you. It's like everything you need is within you. You just got to acknowledge it and get on board with it and use it.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. I love that. Let's talk about the book. So you've got Activate Your RAS, and I truly have. I've been loving the book, and it's awesome. One of the things that, just so you know, where you helped me was early in the book, you talked about the different planes, the four different planes, or that we exist on. And I'd like you to share that, and then I'm going to share afterwards how it helped me, but I'd like you to talk about that.
Ah, brilliant. I can't wait to hear. The 4 different planes. So we have the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual. And all of them have their place. So to keep it really simple, the physical is the kind of the 3D tangible stuff that we can see, the stuff that we do. The mental are our thoughts. The emotional is how we feel. And then the spiritual is bigger than that. It's so much more. Now, when people are attempting to make changes in their life, they often work on the wrong plane. So all of the planes are connected, and when one changes, the others change as well. It's the law of correspondence. That, as within, so without. It's everything is connected and reflects back at us. Yet, if somebody, keep it simple, somebody wants to lose weight, you can sit and meditate and visualize yourself all day having the body that you want, or being as fit as you want. Yet fitness and our body is a physical 3D thing. So we have to make sure that we're working on the plane where the change that we want to make exists, and also on the plane where the problem exists. Because we may well have all the physical things in place, yet if the emotions aren't correct, if they're not where they need to be, then we may end up binge eating our way out of all the good work that we've done. So it's kind of, it's looking at the plane that you want to change, and making sure that you're doing something on that plane to make the changes, and then also taking into account that they're all linked. Because it's easy to, particularly when you go down a kind of a spiritual path or a mindset path, to focus predominantly in one area and think that has all the answers. And it may be that that's the powerhouse behind it, yet they all play together. Everything's got to work in unison. A bit like when I first read about the law of attraction, and thought I can just sit on my couch and a check is going to fall in my lap. It's like, well, money is it's energy, and it's also a physical, tangible thing in that we exchange it. So no amount of meditation is just going to make it appear. Got to go take action. So yeah, that's a kind of overview, and I'd love to hear how it's helped you.
Well, I think that's so great, and how all the planes work together, right? So what happened was when I read that, and you gave the example of that person with health, right, where they're not exercising, not eating well. Well, this is a physical problem. I mean, start, get an exercise program, get some diet changes going. And then the opposite, like you described too, of where, okay, maybe you are doing that, but then you're just not feeling good about yourself. Then that's an emotional problem. And so we're looking at the plane where the problem is. So we have this cabin that we're building, and I've got to come up with a fair bit of cash to do so. And we've been fortunate to have done well in business. And over the last few years, I found myself, because I love the mind, I love manifestation. And I found myself doing what you said. I realized, well, crap, most of what I've been doing was trying to do only with the mind and manifestation, and neglecting the physical, because I, had seen some good success in my life with it. And I realized, you know what? I mean, part of it is I could just up my game a bit. I could put a little more effort into what I'm actually doing to generate it. And honestly, it was within, whenever I started that week and a half or whatever it was, I made a decision, I'm ready to put a little more work into this. And so it was funny in my business life, where I went from just attempting to purely manifest by thought to combining that. I'm still doing that and bringing a little bit more effort into what I was doing. And it was amazing in a short period of time, just how much busier my schedule got, everything, and generated it. So it was great. Yeah, it was really great.
I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah, amazing. And it's, the mindset stuff in our world, that is the kind of the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
If you can go and do lots of the physical, if you're not in alignment internally with the action that you're taking, it's going to feel like hard work.
Yes.
If it works at all.
Yeah.
It is that holistic view as a whole, because we are physical beings.
Yes.
Having a spiritual experience. No, we're spiritual beings having a physical experience. I'll get that the right way around. Yeah, everything counts. It's not just we're either this or that. We are all and everything. So
it's a great way to put it. And I think for myself, where I found is the early part of my life was very heavy on the physical side, lots of effort, lots of work, lots of force, and it worked, but I didn't love it. And then, the later part of my life, I got much more into understanding my mind and manifestation. And I love that. And I realized that, just even as you're talking out loud, I realized that there's a constant process of us evolving, coming up against the old self, the old beliefs. And so what I was running into was this idea was that, well, I don't want to go back to having to work the way that I used to work. And so in doing that, I was putting off some of that effort. And what I found, though, was the minute I read that, I thought, oh yeah, duh. But what I found, though, was that I was loving the process. I'm loving the extra effort. And I think that's the big difference is, and I know you talk about this in the book, but that idea of inspired action, which I think is a major difference from the idea of force, just pure grit and determination in a big way.
Yeah. It's almost a pushing kind of energy of trying to make it happen.
Right.
And I love what you said there. It's in line with really, I suppose, one of the universal laws, the law of polarity, in that everything that exists has its opposite. So for light, there's dark. For poverty, there's wealth. So everything's a kind of a continuum, and it's just different ends of the scales. And there can be a tendency to almost reject one end. So if somebody has struggled or is struggling with money, for example, there can be a tendency to reject where they are and label things as being good or bad. Now, the problem with that is that wealth versus poverty, if you want to put it like that, they're one of the same thing. They're just opposite ends of the same thing. And if you reject one end, then you're also rejecting the other. So wherever you're starting from, it's about accepting, right, this is where I am now. So if I've been working on all the mindset stuff, rather than rejecting that and go, I'm going to go all physical, or, almost having this seesaw-like effect. It's like, right, okay, so wherever I am right now, I accept this is what's happening, and I just love it for what it is. And I'm also going to do this thing, because you can't bring anything into your existence if you're rejecting the opposite to it, because it's all one of the same.
Yeah.
So it's kind of getting on board, going back to the, I suppose, the first thing that we spoke about, which is where can people begin? It's having that awareness and accepting your situation and seeing it as, right, this is just perfect, because this is just my starting off point. And I want to get over to here, which is also perfect. So I'm not rejecting where I am right now, because that's just going to leak energy that's not going to be beneficial. And I'm rejecting the very thing that I want. Just
totally.
The other end of the scale. So
it really is about, you think about that, it really is about balance in those areas. And it makes sense that a life principle is, you think about what's the best way to eat, probably a balanced diet, probably the best way to eat. In parenting, what's the best way to parent? Probably a level of balance. If I'm only just the friend, but there's no rules, there's no any, you know what I mean, right? Same thing in leadership too. And so that makes a lot of sense, though, in that it's not a mindset is everything. It's a big component. There's no doubt. Right. But it's also not action is everything too, because we all know people that work really hard and never produce the results they want. So there really is a balancing process in that as well. So that's so good. So good. I want to hear your perspective on this of, we've talked about kind of the mental being the thoughts and the images. And as I go back to your NLP example, then the emotional component, then the physiology being the physical and what we're doing. What's your perspective on the spiritual self?
Oh gosh, how long have you got? So the spiritual self, which is something that I'm still exploring with, if I'm honest, because I'm a big believer in being a student for life. And
me too.
Adopting that mindset is really quite freeing, because I used to have this thing of I have to have all the answers. Particularly as a trainer, I'm teaching people this stuff. I need to know everything. And it's like, oh, that's never going to happen, and never would I want it to happen, because I love learning. So when it comes to the spiritual side of things, for me, so our mental is our mind, our emotional is what we're feeling. The spiritual is so much bigger than that. So it's the connection to everyone and everything. So we are part of the one. In that the universe and us, there's no separation. And we have, therefore, the ability to tap into everything that the universe has to offer to us. It's available to us. There's, everything is, to get a bit woo-woo on it, that, everything has a frequency to it. So all the answers that we're looking for, the inspiration, the ideas, it's all surrounding us at all times of day, and we are connected to it. The thing that we have to do is just adjust how we're feeling, so we have access to it. So the spiritual stuff really, really excites me, because it's everything is available to us. The answers to any problem, if a problem exists, to go back to the earlier example, the solution is also available.
That's right.
And we have the ability to tap into that solution, because it's part of the one and the all, and we are all connected. There's no separation. It's a bit, I've heard this example many times, where if you pluck a guitar string, like the C string, then if there's a guitar in the same room, that C string will also vibrate. So everything's connected. And to me, that's what spirituality is that, there's no difference between you and I. We're all energy. And that's the stuff that moves worlds. When we can tap into the energetic stuff, that's where the big guns are, because
totally it is.
Go back to kind of action, that's matter attempting to move matter. And it's dense, heavy energy, and it takes time, and it takes a lot of force. Whereas if you can tap into the spiritual side of things and open yourself up to being receptive and just tuning in more to who we are, that's bigger than this physical body, then it opens up worlds. I'm not sure if that answered your question.
No, it's awesome. I mean, I feel the exact same way, and it's so true. And it's great just even seeing in the scientific community more and more when they talk about the quantum field and the unified field, and that this whole idea of this infinite field of energy, that everything is connected, nothing separate. And by the way, everybody watching, everybody listening too, I mean, in my mind, this is why the law of attraction works. if everything wasn't connected, the law of attraction couldn't work. Right. But it works because we're all connected. You know, a small, tiny example, you think of someone, they call you, they text you. Well, obviously there's some kind of connection there. So people think it could be just random chance. I don't believe in that, but that's how you can, you know, draw things to you, is because it's all connected. Right. And because there is one universal energy and one universal mind that we're all a part of. Yeah. So I feel the exact same way, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so powerful because it is, you know, everything that could exist does exist.
That's right.
All at the same time. And the reality that we experience is the one that we observe. It's the observer effect. So when we look at something, it changes it and it brings it into fruition. So that's where our mind is so powerful, because we have the ability to focus. And so the stuff that we focus on is the one that takes something from being possible to being probable. So that sustained focus over a period of time takes that energy and brings it down into the physical matter, the physical creation that we then call manifestation. Because we're manifesting all the time, right? It's like we're doing it all day long. It's just, are we doing it on purpose? Or are we just kind of being at the mercy of circumstances and whatever kind of comes our way, and then blaming them for it, which is what I used to do.
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, that's a big part of the book, Activate the RAS as well. And, you know, that kind of focusing mechanism. So for those that maybe aren't familiar with it, let's talk a bit about that system and that structure.
Yeah. So the RAS is your reticular activating system. And it's a bundle of nerves at the bottom of your spine that acts a bit like the gatekeeper to your mind. So you mentioned before about when you think of somebody and then they call you, or you decide that you like a particular car, or you want to go to a certain holiday destination, and then suddenly it's everywhere. Everybody's driving one. Everybody's been to that resort that you've never heard of before. It's in the magazines, it's on the TV, it's everywhere. And the question I had when I first started learning about the law of attraction and thoughts becoming things was, right, I'm seeing it everywhere, but what does that mean? Does that mean that I should go and buy a car? Like, why am I suddenly seeing it? And the truth is, it was always there. It's just, it wasn't important to us prior to that moment. So we deleted it out of our experience. The gatekeeper to our mind kind of said, no, you're not getting in because you're not relevant. So our reticular activating system acts like a radar that scans all of the millions of bits of information that our senses are being bombarded with every second of the day, and brings into our conscious awareness the stuff that we deem to be important, the stuff that we are focusing on, the kind of the way that our mind thinks and is programmed to seek out that information. So the book is really about training your brain to be activated, to notice the opportunities that you want, to notice the multiple ways that you can create the life that you want, and start to change your mind and reprogram it to become aware of that. So it does it on autopilot, and that makes life so much easier, because it's like, you know, oh, I'd really love to have an opportunity to, I don't know, speak on stage. And then the next day, your reticular activating system is going, yoo-hoo, here's a person you should talk to. And
that's
have you thought about this idea over here? And you're like, wow, was that always there? I'd never seen it before. And it's like, yeah, because your brain got activated and went, here you go. Here's what you've been looking for.
Yeah. And it's kind of, I love that example. And it's kind of the combination of the two. I mean, when we're thinking about the reticular activating system, is that you're noticing more opportunities as an example. And then the law of attraction is that sometimes those people, places, circumstances, events, well, they're showing up, but now you're aware to notice them. And they may have been showing up before, right? They may have been there. Quick example, I was in Las Vegas 4 weeks ago. And on that morning before I was taking my flight home to come back, I told myself, and it's funny you brought up speaking, I said, well, I want to do another corporate seminar is what I want to do. And I'd like to find, you know, what I actually said was, I'd like to draw it to me. I like to just have, you know, corporate seminar. So I go on the plane, I'm sitting beside this lady, these two ladies, I'm in the middle seat, we're in the emergency exit row. And, you know, I'm just talking with her, how are you? Stuff like that, chatting. And she's a part of a First Nations kind of like tribal band, you know, like council member. And so we get chatting a little bit, and then she falls asleep. I'm just doing my thing. I'm journaling. I'm doing this on the flight. And then I thought to myself, I wonder if they ever bring in speakers. So then she wakes up, she's checking her email. I glance over and it's a conference. That's what the email was. It was about this conference. So I said, hey, do you guys host conferences? She goes, yeah, we actually do all the time. Actually, the lady beside you, she's the one in charge of it. So, well, that's what I do is I do speaking. She goes, oh, incredible. I'll introduce you to her. So it was a great, a great example of that, of, how did I end up between these two people? Well, that's the law, right? I mean, that's manifestation at its finest. But then that RAS, had it not been activated, I may have not even thought to talk to her.
Yeah, that's it. The thought dropped into your mind to take that inspired action, and you noticed the screen with the conference stuff, which may be something that you could have even looked at that screen and just not taken it in, not consciously processed it at all. So it just wouldn't have been even a thought that was planted there. So yeah, I love it. It's perfect example of the simple everyday stuff, because this isn't always about this like bam big moment of realization and the X factor calling you to say, do you want to star on our show? It can just be the simple everyday things, and that has a knock-on effect to the next thing and the next thing. And it's only when you look back that you think, oh my gosh, how did I get here? And it is that, again, going back to the very first point, just focusing on today and what can I do right now to feel a bit better, to become aware of my thoughts. And over time, it's that knock-on effect of, wow, that's where the big change happened. But people don't often see that, do they? They see the journey, because you don't interact with people every day necessarily, of I went from this to this. Like, no, there was a whole journey in between. So how can you fall in love with that process and enjoy doing that?
Yeah. I think what you just said is such a great guiding principle. What can I do today to think and feel and act in a way that feels good, right? Ultimately is so great, and taking what's in front of you. Hey, I want to ask you this, and there's a lot of great stuff in the book, and in the book, everybody too, there's at different parts of the chapters of what's called activation tips or activation points. And what Sean's done is created great exercises for you to reflect on and do to help you apply these in your life. So on the note of applying in your life, I want to know, for you personally, as you're creating the next level of life for you, what are the practices, what are the tools that you're using in your life?
So I am a big advocate of what I do and the book. So I wrote the book based on my own experiences and how I was using it at the time and how it was helping me. And I continue to do that. So even up until, even like this week, I think definitely last week, I'll give you a specific example of how I've been using it. So there's the universal law of rhythm, which is, for the tide coming in, it must go out. For every up, there's a down. And it's that constant yo-yo of life. Now, when things are really good, it can be easy to kind of ride that wave and feel really great and enjoy it. But if you imagine it a bit like a pendulum, if something swings really high in one direction, it has to swing in equal opposition to it. So it's going to swing all the way back to the not so feeling good place. So I've certainly had these moments, particularly recently, where I have felt super duper excited and I'm all kind of up in the air and life is great. And then the pendulum swings in the opposite direction and it can feel really, like a real downer, but for no reason. It's like, why do I feel rubbish? Because everything's fine, but I'm just feeling bleh. And when you see this, particularly in people that have kind of really extreme lives, like athletes or performers, if you're in a rock band and you're out in front of 50,000 people doing your thing and they're on such a high, it's like coming down from that, the low has got to be, it's got a crash. So it's this balance and juggle of dancing with the rhythm. So when things are really good, some of the things that I do is make sure that I keep really grounded in that. So I enjoy the high, I ride it, and I also make sure that I meditate. I get outside and walk in nature and do things that are really grounding and keep me stable in the highs. And then when those inevitable lows come, the key then is to keep focused on what you want. Even though you're maybe not feeling great, is to keep focused, do what you can to feel good in the moment, And always keep in mind, this too shall pass. So this is just a moment in time. It's not, in the past, I used to think, oh my God, I've just gone back to my old ways and I've taken 50 steps backwards. And it's like, oh no, this is just a minute where I'm not feeling as high as I was. So what can I do to make myself feel better whilst continuing to focus on what I need to do? To apply that to use the gym as an example, because it's an easy one. You'll have those days where you feel pumped. It's like, yeah, I'm on it and I'm going to smash it out and like lift all the weights and do all the running or whatever it is you do. And then you have those days where it's like, oh, I just can't be bothered. Really, I can't even be bothered to go. So on the days where you can't be bothered to go, it's like, just show up for 5 minutes and just do something to keep that momentum, to just keep focused on, I still go to the gym. I'm just going to take the pressure off today, maybe do it a bit easier. And then in the highs, do a bit of stretching afterwards. Go and do a bit of yoga to finish off the session so that it's not so extreme. So I'm always doing that. And then the other thing is kind of embracing failure. I mentioned it in the book about Sarah Blakely, who created Spanx. And at the end of every day after school, she'd sit down with her dad and the brother, and he would ask her, how have you failed today? So they were actively encouraged to go and fail. And I love that, because in my world, there is no failure. It's just feedback. It's like, this didn't work. Maybe I want to do this differently. So almost pushing the failure button to go, right, I'm just going to go for it, so much so that I have to fail. I have to make mistakes because I couldn't possibly get it all right first time. So it just completely reframes anything that goes quote unquote wrong. Is, okay, brilliant. I must have been in the game to even know that that didn't work. In fact, I did a podcast today, which is quite relevant to that, in that people kind of waiting to be ready before they take any action, kind of waiting until you've got all the answers. But the truth is, until you're in the game, you don't know what questions to ask to get the answers to it.
So true.
It's only when you get out, if you want to run a marathon and you just sit and read about marathons all day long, it's not until you put your running shoes on and you get out that you think, oh, now I want to know, where do I get more comfortable trainers? But until you hit the road, it's like, I don't know what kind of trainers I'm going to be looking for. So it's like, just go and do it. Know that it's going to be messy. Know that you're going to make mistakes, and see that as part of that childlike play. Kids, they don't get a paint set out and think this has to be Picasso first time. It's like, I'm just going to whack some paint on and have some fun and make a mess. And then next time it'll be better.
It's so true. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. I think that's so valuable. And that idea of rhythm and, being okay with the downs. Everybody's all right with the ups, right? No one has a problem with those. But then being okay with the downs and recognizing to still, do what I can today, focus on, can I feel a little bit better? And then, but maintaining whatever it may be, keep taking the steps that are in front of you. And you may not bring the same kind of energy that you did yesterday to it, but to keep that going. So I think that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
This applies, by the way, just to finish off on that, because I think this is important, particularly at the minute. This doesn't just apply to us as individuals. This is a universal law. So if you think about it in terms of recessions and things like that, it's like there is the downward spiral where the recession hits, and that always follows by an even bigger boom, which is like another dip that follows. So when we're going through these kind of global transitions, or whatever the word might be, is knowing that this isn't going to last forever. So how can I ride this wave knowing that this too shall pass? How can I just embrace it and learn from it, and kind of see the step away, almost zoom out and have a different perspective of, this is just a moment in time. And if I can step outside of it and see this is just part of a whole bigger picture, and there's lots of moving parts that we don't have access to. It's like, we'll get through it. We will, even if at times it feels really sticky.
I had heard that there's no such thing as a straight line in nature, and that it's
exactly
sideways, backwards. I mean, all that stuff, right? So good. Sian, what's the best place for people to connect with you and find more of you?
Instagram is where I hang out most. So I am Sian Hill is my handle. And then there's the podcast, which is the Vibrant Mind, Vibrant Life podcast.
Cool. And everybody, it'll be in the show notes, but if you're listening, it's SIAN Hill. So make sure you put that in there. And thanks for the time today. This has been great. I love getting to know you and getting to connect with you. And I know that we're, like I said in the beginning, so aligned in terms of the way we think and what we're doing in the world. And it's awesome. Your book's made an impact in my life, and I'm excited as you get to continue that message and share it with more and more people. So I appreciate you being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. And yeah, I appreciate you and the work that you're doing too. So yeah, brilliant.
It's great. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you tuning in. As always, if you're new, make sure to click subscribe and leave a quick review for us as well. We'll see you soon. Bye.